Thanks for coming, everyone. Thanks, Megan. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys. I always love coming to the iLab. It's a really cool place. I mentored one of the teams in the Cultural Entrepreneurship Challenge, which was really fun. And that was just a great experience. So let's see, I am originally an industrial designer. So I used to design products for Bose Corporation. So I designed speakers and DVD players and remote controls and all kinds of plastic goodness out there. And then I got really into teaching. I used to teach at Wentworth Institute of Technology, undergrad, industrial design, but now I teach at Babson College, go Beavers. I teach in the MBA program there, and I teach design to business students, which is kind of a fun and interesting challenge. All the while, though, I run Design Museum Boston. I'm the executive director, and we are a small nonprofit museum. We're all about public design education. So we are like the Museum of Science, except you go to the Museum of Science to learn about gravity, but you come to Design Museum Boston to learn about design, creativity, ideation, prototyping, things that designers do every day, but you might not see out there in the world. So like any good museum, we do tours, we do exhibitions. We have an exhibition at the airport. We do workshops. I love this picture. This girl's really getting into making her bench at one of our workshops. We do outdoor stuff. We have a really kind of interesting opportunity because the content that we exhibit is out there in the world, right? Design is literally everywhere. It's all around us, and it impacts every part of our lives every day. We're lucky that sort of pop culture is starting to kind of design sort of bubbling up through TV shows and magazines and the media, but people definitely want to learn more because design is sort of this mysterious kind of activity, right? You don't get to see it actually happen normally. Unlike when you get to go see a music performance and you get to see someone perform, design really happens behind closed doors. So a lot of times people only recognize design when it's bad, right? If your chair isn't comfortable, you might think, oh man, you know, this is a horrible design. Or if you're lost in the airport, this could be, oh man, this is a horribly designed airport. Oh yeah, there's the back hurting. Nice. So we really try to show the process behind design because that's really what I find the most interesting thing. We all know about the result, but it's the process and the thinking and the creativity and the brainstorming and ideation that really makes design an interesting process. So we really try to both put amazing design up on pedestals, but also explain how it happens. I'm a huge fan of museums. I go to museums all the time, love them. They're great places for the public to learn about design, learn about fine art. And I thought, man, why does Boston not have a design museum? I had been to many design museums around the world and just could not believe that it didn't exist yet. So in 2009, my business partner and I decided we were going to start a design museum in Boston. We have literally no idea what that means or what that entails. And I can honestly tell you that this was in my head. I was like, this is going to be it. It's going to be this amazing. I think this is the British Museum. I'm like, we're going to have columns. We're going to have marble. It's going to be amazing. And then we remembered that in 2009, it just wasn't the best time to start a new nonprofit, let alone do anything, because the recession really hit hard. So people were still giving to nonprofits, but they weren't giving to new, untested nonprofits, startups. So we didn't get this, but what we saw were lots of places like this, which are empty retail spaces, public spaces, and outdoor spaces that just weren't being activated, right? They were sort of empty, which was for us kind of almost a benefit of the recession, if I can even say that out loud. So the hardheads that we are, we decided we weren't going to take no for an answer, and we're going to rethink what it is to be a museum and how we can operate as a museum. And we had started to see different models in retail. Has anyone been to like a pop-up shop? I mean, I know you have. I know you're going to talk about that. So these are stores that, see the segues that we're going to start building here? So pop-up stores will pop up for 3 weeks to 6 months and sort of sell their products, maybe as part of a conference that's going on or a festival. And then they'll pop down, right? And they'll kind of go away. So it's a really lightweight model. We decided, so instead of having one location for the museum, that beautiful marble building, we were going to put our exhibitions in places all over Boston. So and that's where we kind of came up with our slogan, right? Design is everywhere, so are we. So we go where people already go. We put exhibitions in places where people already are. So it's less like you actually go to Design Museum Boston as a destination, although that's happening more as we grow and people become more aware of us. We're 4 years old right now, by the way. But it's more of something you discover while you're already out and about. So it's kind of turning the museum model kind of up on its head. And we'll get into what that actually means. I wanted to show one example of one of our programs that really embodies this. Has anyone seen Street Seats? Any 4-Point Channel people? Nice, cool. So it's an outdoor exhibition of new public seating around Boston's 4-Point Channel. And we had a design competition to sort of rethink what it means to have a public bench in this area. You guys know this is the Innovation District, in quotes. So it's kind of cool to think about what does a bench look like in the Innovation District. So we had a competition. We got entries from all over the world. I think we got over 170 entries. And they had to submit, do I have a laser? Well, you can see them. Little models, which are super cute and fun to play with, if you like dolls and that sort of thing. But they came from 23 countries, which was cool just to see all this amazing creativity. And then we funded 18 benches that are actually out there and you can sit on like this guy's about to do in this awesome action shot. To have the educational component about the exhibition, we have next to each bench what we call our beacons. And so these are like the walls of the museum. And they have information about the bench and about the team. And then we also have this really cool app that works with the beacons so that when you pull up the app, it knows which bench you're at and pulls up videos and information about that. You can actually change the color as well by using the color wheel of the light on the beacon, so it's pretty cool. But I want to show a couple of examples of the benches. This is cleat. Any sailboat or boating people out there, you know this looks like a mooring cleat. This guy has some grass right on it, which is kind of fun. Do you guys know IDEO? I imagine IDEO was one of the winning benches. It's called City Blocks, and some of them even light up themselves. This is luminous. So talking about disrupting models, so I want to make sure we talk about that. And I want to talk about how important it was at that critical moment when we pivoted from British Museum columns to we're going to be this new type of museum. It was so important for us to keep that word museum in our name because that already has all these great connotations around it that we wanted to hold really tightly, right? It's a safe place to educate people. People can go. You don't have to be a designer to go to a design museum, just like you don't have to be a scientist to go to a science museum. It's a safe place, it's a community place, it's a resource. So we could have been the design council or the design association, but that word museum was really critical to kind of keep that, what we wanted people to think of us as a museum. So how do we do it? I think this pretty much embodies pretty much everything about that. We work really hard. I mean, we're a startup. Every day we're hitting it hard. I work, no joke, all night, every weekend. If any entrepreneur, claims that they aren't like working all the time, then I don't know if they're being a successful entrepreneur, or they're not growing their business as fast as they potentially could be. So people are always like, oh, Sam, you need work-life balance. And I'm like, maybe in like 15 years or something like that, I don't know. But I think the most important point, and this is maybe get a little philosophical, but the most important thing for us besides the working hard has been just believing in the museum. And so what does it take to actually believe in what you're doing? And I correct people all the time. They're saying, oh, you guys are almost like a real museum. And we're like, no, we're a museum. We are a real museum. Like we have to tell ourselves that, like my staff and volunteers, like we train them. I've actually had people come to our galleries and be like, man, this stuff should really be in a museum. And I'm like, it is in a museum. And like, you really have to kind of hit them over the head, but you have to believe it yourself. Right? So I always think about, and it might be weird, but like, why does the United States exist? Because we all believe in it, and we also put together all these different documents and systems in place that actually codify that belief. And that can be down all the way to the business cards of your business, all the way to if you have a vision document or a mission statement. So our model, I kind of encapsulated in these two illustrations. I showed this one. So we try to be in as many places as possible, right? Because we can reach out to different audiences that way. So whether we do an exhibition in all these places or an event, we can reach different audiences wherever we go. When my board asks me for our business plan, I always just show them this because I don't have anything else to show them. And this isn't, I don't think, even really complete, but we get our funding through membership, which I'll talk about a little bit in a second. grants, and of course sponsorships, corporate sponsorships. But it all sort of boils down to we give education out and we get philanthropy in. And so in a lot of ways, I mean, we have to be in every business possible, right? I always think that it would be easier, it definitely would have been easier to start a traditional museum if it hadn't been for the recession. I think it even would have been easier to start like a car company, right? Because the model for car companies exists. Whereas sort of in this social entrepreneurship space, we have to be extremely nimble and open to lots of different revenue streams and lots of different models. And my hope is we can even add to this column, right? So that there's different ways that we're monetizing the education that we're putting out there. So the disruption point for us, as I mentioned, was that moment when we were sort of like, what does it really take to be a museum, right? Does the building make the museum, or does the content and the mission make the museum? And I'm betting pretty hard on the mission and the content, right? Because we've said we're not going to have a building. But the interesting thing that kind of comes out of that is, so if you talk to someone in a traditional museum, they're all about that building, right? But for us, it's all about the relationships that we build in the neighborhoods, in communities, because we literally have nothing else. Like that is the museum. We can't have a relationship and then break that relationship and say, well, we're just going to go back to our museum and shut our giant door and go to that point. We have to have good relationships. We have to always be working with community leaders, with the city, with venues to make things happen. So kind of the positives of our model are that we have this amazing presence that I've talked about. Our content, we are at this awesome intersection and this point, I think, in the history of content production and development, where there's mobile, there's distributed. We talked about pop-up shops. You guys been to a Halloween store? I mean, these guys kill. They just print money because they pop up right before Halloween, and they sell you the stuff for Halloween, and then they go away. It's amazing. Things like Meetup. Do you guys know Meetup.com? One of the only internet properties where it tries to get you offline to meet offline, so meet online, then go offline. I always throw the post office in because they basically put themselves out of business by putting post offices in grocery stores and automated teller machines, right? So we don't really need a post office anymore. So we're at this really cool sort of intersection of delivering content directly to people. Because frankly, I love museums, but how often do you actually get to go, right? How often do you actually make time to do that? We're all so busy. We're also busy with work, school. So putting the museum sort of in your face in places like City Hall and the airport, places where you already go, makes a lot of sense. And actually, a really fun thing to do is that context, right? We always try to incorporate the venue into our exhibitions, right? So we had an exhibition at City Hall about design. We had the design of City Hall in the exhibition. So you're standing in this space learning about how it was designed. And one of my favorite all-time success stories was when a security guard came up to me in City Hall and started to explain to me how the building was designed. And he's like, you should go check out this exhibition. I was like, you know what, maybe I will. So that was really cool. We had an event last week on the Greenway outside next to the new carousel with the designer of the carousel. So we're riding the carousel. He's talking about how he designed it, talking about all these cool things, and we're right there. It's not like we're in a random lecture hall. I'm just kidding. This is the perfect place to talk about entrepreneurship. That's what context is. So we can be really nimble, as you can probably imagine, right? When you invest a lot of money into a building, you kind of have to slow down a little bit. And probably even more amazing and cool is we can be really capital efficient with our donations, right? So a donor knows that when they donate to us, the money's not going to fix the toilets or to re-facade the building or anything like that. It's going to programming or to people, which is really what it's all about. But I want to mention that there are lots of good things, right, about these models, right? So traditional museums have this critical mass that is just inherent. I mean, that is the definition of critical mass. I mean, that's just a lot of mass, right? So it's there, metaphorically and literally. For us, critical mass looks a lot different, right? We have to have a lot of programming out there in the city of Boston so that people know that there's a design museum, because they can't just go to the building. They have to be able to see these programs, and sort of this cloud of programming becomes that critical mass. They also have these amazing avenues of funding, which I'm so jealous of and sometimes wish that I had one of these, because you think if you go to museums and they have their donor wall, the reason a lot of these places exist is because a handful of multimillionaires said that this should exist. And when that happens, you get to name the galleries after them, they name the courtyard after them. We don't have the courtyard or the gallery to name after Mr. or Mrs. wealthy person. So that's frustrating. But we have lots of other opportunities to fundraise that traditional museums don't get to have. So I guess one of the major points I want to make tonight is that you can disrupt these models, but don't do this, which is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And I've had board members say this phrase to me so many times. We have this great opportunity to do all these amazing things, but we can't forget what makes sense for museums. So we have exhibitions, we have events, we have a website, we have maps. Our maps are a little different than a map from a museum, right? Our maps are of the actual city, right? Which is kind of fun. One point on entrepreneurship is, if you want, back to that belief, like if you want people to believe that you're a museum, have all the stuff that museums have. Have tote bags, go to a museum and look at what they have. They have tote bags, they have t-shirts, they have buttons, they have stickers, they have notebooks, they have maps, they have websites, they have staff that works there, they have a board of directors. So take what's good about what they have and make it work for you. Perfect example, short anecdote. When we started the museum, I mean, the model just flipped so hard in my head. Like, we are going to be completely different than every museum. And my board was like, well, when are we launching a membership program? And I was like, we don't need a membership program. We are so different. I mean, why would you become a member of a museum that you can go to for free anyway? Like, everyone becomes a member. I'm a member of the ICA, so I can go to the opening receptions and get in free. And they were like, well, we need a membership program. But the model just flipped so hard, I was like pushing back. But in the end, it was so important, right? Because we had no structure for people to give. So we had no way for their to be recognized or to give them anything, even a membership card or a tote bag, something for them to feel affiliated with the museum. So while you can go to our exhibitions for free, our members get to come to special events, they get all kinds of perks, we send them goodies in the mail, and they feel like they're part of this museum. And honestly, I love our members because they just want the museum to exist. Because it's already out there, like they don't need to pay. Like it's like NPR, right? It's already playing on the radio. They have this awesome moment where they can guilt you into giving while you're listening. We don't really have that, although I can be very persuasive. So I guess my point is just to be really open about what's possible in these models. You don't want to throw away the good, but you definitely want us to turn some things on their head. I mean, really the only thing we've done is not had a building. And what that does is allows you to kind of be free of some of those norms. But I think even more important, problems come up, like fundraising, where you have to solve them in new and different ways. So it's just kind of like a snowball, right? You have to be constantly filling in the gaps of your model that you just disrupted. It's like you just broke the window, and then now you're trying to piece it together. And you have to be really innovative how you solve those problems. A couple examples. So I don't have a lot of museum or exhibition design experience, but I've gone to countless exhibitions. And they all look different, right? If you go to the MFA, you might see an exhibition on, there was a blue and white ceramics exhibition, but then there was like a World War II fashion exhibition. They look totally different from the graphics that are in there to the placards. Everything about them is different, and that's okay. And so that's what we did, right? All of our exhibitions looked different. The problem was they were all in different places all around Boston. So we came up to this problem where, like retail, for example, was in the Prudential Center, in the mall, right there. And I was so proud of it. We had worked so hard on it. And I'm just kind of sitting there, and I'm like, yeah. And people are coming through, and they're checking it out, and they're like, man, the mall did such a good job on this exhibition. And I was just like, oh my God. Like blood, sweat, and tears into this work. And then because it's in someone else's building or in a building with a different label on it. So what we quickly realized is if you have a building, your exhibitions can all look different, but you're always in this branded space. So for us, it was really important to solve that problem and make all of our exhibitions look the same, which is from a designer, I mean, it was like heartbreaking, right? Because you want to be super creative about everything, but it was a constraint that we put on ourselves because when someone goes to a Design Museum Boston exhibition, no matter where it is, you want them to know that it's a Design Museum Boston exhibition. So we have new branding for all our exhibitions that fits into this key sort of framework. And to go even farther, since our exhibitions are everywhere, we realized whoever has the biggest sign is the one who wins. I mean, size matters, I guess. So that's where we really developed these beacons that are at the exhibition, so you can say, oh, Design Museum Boston is there. Oh, no, it's over there. And then that ties to our online tools, which are really fun as well. And then as you develop these innovative things, just be open to really cool things. And I was mentioning this to Megan, the really great news for us is that we're expanding nationally, right? So we don't have a building in Boston, so we can think about doing programming all over the country. So we just launched Design Museum Foundation, which is going to be our national entity, and we're about to launch in Portland, Oregon, which is going to be super exciting. And so now we are bi-coastal, which is super scary, and and now there's going to be a museum in Portland, which is pretty cool. So that's Design Museum Boston. Become members, because there's lots of cool things to do. I mean, you guys all got your little map when you checked in, and thanks. So you're going to make the switch?
Yep.
Nice.
Hey guys. So my name is Marcus Johnson Smith. Megan introduced me a little bit, my background. I am an author, a nonprofit professional, and an entrepreneur. That's how I like to label myself. And I'm going to talk to you guys about disrupting norms to drive some impact. But I really want to do more storytelling rather than the kind of professorial approach Sam took. First, I want to do some context setting because we have used these terms and I want folks to really understand them from the dictionary point. So to disrupt is to interrupt an event, activity, or process by causing a disturbance or problem. And impact is to have a strong effect on someone or something. So a little bit background about me. Like I said, this is me. I think that color matches my color, right? So yeah, I'm an author, a nonprofit professional, and entrepreneur. I grew up in Cambridge. I have strong roots here. I love this place. I don't think I'm going to go anywhere else. My background, I went to college here. I went to Northeastern, and I kind of just funneled through the nonprofit track as a career. Pretty much everything from the program development at the neighborhood community level to the institutions, Harvard, Northeastern, to working at the Boston Foundation and the corporate philanthropy sector. So that's kind of where my background lies. So I had a conversation one day a couple of years ago with this man, Dennis Scholl. Anybody know who the Knight Foundation is? Not too many people know what the Knight Foundation is. So I met Dennis Scholl. He came to give a presentation at the Boston Foundation one day. Wealthy man, and he told me, get out there and get your fucking money. The only thing guaranteed in the nonprofit sector is a 3% annual raise. So I said, aha, that was an aha moment for me. And so I thought to myself, all right, I had this, I've always had this instinct to do something and be an entrepreneur. But what was it, I asked myself, what do I really want to do? My passion, right? I think that's really what gets us back to doing what we love and being successful. My passion is really in the arts. If I could be anything and if I had all the money in the world, I would be a pianist and I would write novels for the rest of my life. That's all I'd do. My other passion is fashion. I like to look okay and look nice. And I'm really a connoisseur of lifestyle. And so these are the two brands I'm going to talk to you about today, the Sneaker Museum and Kush Groove. But first, I really want to talk about the Sneaker Museum. So as Sam alluded to, people's first instinct when they think of a museum, they think of a couple things. They think of a facility. They think of objects on a pedestal. And we really wanted to rethink how we approach the museum using the sneaker. Because, again, similar to Sam, cultural facilities are the largest strains on nonprofit cultural organizations. And so as we were thinking about how do we create a sustainable model, cultural facilities was, the thing that we weren't even thinking about. Again, we really wanted to look at the sneaker not as the sneaker on a pedestal, but how do we take this object and use it as a unit for analyzing contemporary pop culture. So you asked, why would someone want a sneaker museum? Why is there a need for a sneaker museum? And it really comes back to the business part of it, right? Because we don't do this just to do it. We do it to reach some objectives and some outcomes. And so the connection here is there's a market for a sneaker museum, there's a demand, and there's an opportunity. And I'm going to talk about that. So the market. So as I was going around trying to sell this idea, and I know Sam can relate with me on the trouble and the difficulty to really sell an idea that someone has that doesn't really exist, right? People really think about the museum as a facility, but we didn't want to approach it that way. When we started reaching out to different facilities, I realized they actually have an interest in bringing fresh programming, creative programming to their facilities because they want to attract customers. With the demand, everybody and their mama has a sneaker story. So I'm going to ask a few questions. Do you have a favorite sneaker story?
I like Skechers.
You like Skechers? Why?
I don't know, I've been buying them since I was young, and I like their looks a little different, and I guess I got accustomed to what they were doing and felt like I connected to them.
There's a connection, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite sneaker story?
When I was younger, I used to love to wear Air Force Ones all the time, all different colors.
Just cuz, right?
Just because.
Right. Who else has a favorite sneaker story? Who else has some fashionable sneakers? I'm going to point someone out. My friend right here. What's your favorite sneaker story?
So not a store, but a brand maybe that built up over time.
Mm-hmm.
Good performance, made environmentally safely.
Cool. So I stopped for a second because I wanted to really demonstrate the demand, right? Because our connection, or how we translated demand, is that we know that people have a connection to sneakers. It's one of those things that everybody has. And so that's what we figured out, there's demand for this, and so, which brought us to the next place, which was the opportunity. People will pay for an arts experience using sneakers at the centerpiece of that experience. And I'm going to show you a perfect example and talk about it for a second. So one of the programs that the Sneaker Museum has launched is called our Stay Fresh social events, right? I'm going to talk about more of the programming stuff that we do. But what we've done, and this kind of opens the gate to talk about disruption and disrupting the process in how facilities approach creative programming. We had this Stay Fresh event at the Emerald Hotel a couple months back. Brought out on a Wednesday night about 300-400 people between the ages of, I'd say, 21 to 30. The bar tab was the largest that the Emerald has had on a weeknight. And so, again, it demonstrates that people will pay for an arts experience with the sneaker at the centerpiece of that experience. And again, it comes back to, where's the disruption taking place? The disruption's taking place at the facilities level, right? We think about the museum as existing, as Sam alluded to, just in one space, in one form, but it actually exists, and it can exist in different places. And again, it's really coming back to the approach and the business of it, right? There's an economy for it. People are paying for sneakers. There's a market for it. And then it's really about the business, the Sneaker Museum concept, as the solution to this disruption. So the impact that we're looking to have, again, we're a startup, so we're really figuring out the things that we want to do. But we're really looking at three impact areas, and that's the arts experience, that's social education, social justice education, and that's the community building. And I want to just define these terms a bit for a second. Hold on. When we talk about the arts experience, essentially it's the exhibitions usually that people are familiar with in the museum world. But the other two components which I really want to get into are the social justice educational piece and the community building pieces. When you think about sneakers and the social justice connection, there's a lot of different engagement points you can talk about. Sneakers are part of a global economy, right? How sneakers are produced, how sneakers are bought and sold, they're part of a global economy. So there's that social justice impact of sneakers being made for $5 in China and folks in Boston paying $300 for sneakers. So there's that social justice education piece that we really want to bring to light. And we're doing that with a partnership with the Northeastern University Sport and Society program to help develop that content and really think through and facilitate that discussion with our audience. The second piece I want to get at is the community building aspect. What's unique about sneakers that we've deconstructed is that it has a powerful way of bringing audiences together. Again, I showed you the example when we did our Stay Fresh social events that just advertising and telling people, there's an event, it's sneakers, young audiences gravitate towards these things. And there's such an opportunity to have conversations and bring people together around the concept of sneakers and pop culture and that intersection. And so, how we think about providing impact for our audiences, we do it through relevant programming. And so what we did is we came up with the Soul Boston 2-year project, which is a series of Boston-based exhibitions, social events, and educational programs that take place at universities, cultural facilities, and museums in the greater Boston area. And I want to just talk a little bit about our programming, but I also want to tell you a quick story. So I met Sam, or I learned of Sam a couple of years ago as I was in my chair at the Boston Foundation reviewing grants. I got Sam's proposal, and I was like, yes, this is awesome. It was for the design you guys did at City Hall. And I was like, this is awesome. But it wasn't part of the foundation strategy, so we couldn't fund it. My bad. But I think I want to really bring that back because, fast forward 4 years later, Sam and I got together a couple of months ago, and I was picking his brain because he was more advanced in this space now. I was picking his brain about how do we think about the museum outside of the museum, right? Because I think what Sam does very well is provide content and opportunities for target audiences to engage. And I think you do that very well without space. And I kind of took a few pages from Sam's playbook to think about our program delivery. And the programs that we put together are field trips to sneaker corporations, because in Boston there's about 5 global sneaker corporations within a 30-mile radius. So people love sneakers, let's bring them to the sneaker places. The exhibitions I talked about the Stay Fresh social events. The Arts and Diversity series in pop culture is really about taking the content and the facilitation from the Northeastern Sport and Society people and really driving that conversation with our audiences. And the last piece of our programming is our collector convos. What we do is we host conversations at retail stores where people traditionally go buy sneakers, and we gather people and have them talk about their passion for sneaker collecting. And so I put this last quote because I was recently asked, what's the best advice you have for entrepreneurs kind of in my space, right? Because I'm only 3 years in, but we're doing pretty good. And my advice really is learn your business model, learn your customer and what they want, what they really want. And I think we've really seized this opportunity in understanding our market and understanding our customer, and then find your grind and deliver. And I think that's what we're really doing now, is taking what we know and really activating it to really have that impact that we're looking to have. If you get a chance, check us out online, both Kush Groove, sneakermuseum.com. You can catch us on all the social media channels, all those things. And thank you all for your time.